France is just the latest of a growing list of European governments that are moving away from US-based tech platforms. By 2027, all French government employees will replace Microsoft Teams and Zoom with software that's made in France. The move is fueling calls for the Canadian government to reduce its reliance on US big tech giants. For more on how Canada could respond to Europe's shift, we're joined this morning by tech analyst Carmi Levy. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Yeah, well, this is a fascinating story. European officials dropping Microsoft because of what they are calling the importance of digital sovereignty. Back in September, Austria said its military will no longer be using Microsoft Office. In November, German state said it's going to stop using Microsoft Outlook for government emails. I remember this happening with TikTok, for example, when government officials, policing agencies here in Canada stopped using it. It was over a threat to security. What's driving the trend here in Europe?
Well, I mean, the fact is, its political context here, the U.S. has become an increasingly belligerent force on the geopolitical landscape. And because most of the technologies that we use day to day for basic workflow, so whether you're working for yourself or you're working for a company, those tools are cloud-based and they're American-owned. And so when I send a message in Gmail, or I use Google to look something up, or I store something, I write it up in Microsoft Office, it's sitting on an American server and it's subject to American oversight. And we are seeing American government agencies, the Department of Homeland Security, for example, using administrative subpoenas to go after data on these servers if they think that someone has, say, criticized ICE. And so even if you don't live in the U.S., if you live on the outside, you're subject to that American technological control. And that is a geopolitical technological risk. And more countries are looking at that going, hey, we have to be masters of our own technological domain. Otherwise, the U.S. gets to make the rules. We are increasingly vulnerable.
If our relationship continues along in this sort of adversarial vein with the U.S., we talk a lot about Arctic sovereignty and sovereignty even in like weapons procurement, for example. But let's talk digital sovereignty. Why should Canada be concerned about sovereignty in a digital world?
Because technological warfare is the easiest kind of warfare to prosecute. You don't have to fire any weapons. You just have to go into a server, grab some data, and you have achieved some kind of advantage over whoever owns that data. And so Canada needs to recognize that if our data is flowing across the border and we are not controlling it, then someone else gets to make the rules. And, we've seen this is an unpredictable government with an unpredictable leader. Who knows what comes next and how they will use that data as a lever, for example, maybe in CUSMA negotiations or something else. But if we had stored that north of the border, if we were using our own technology infrastructure, we wouldn't be subject to that external influence. We would be coming from a stronger position.
Last fall, Prime Minister Carney said that he's directing the Major Projects Office, that's the new one that fast-tracks these national projects, to help develop a Canadian sovereign cloud. How would that work?
So essentially, it would replace the cloud services that we use now that are largely based in the U.S. with companies and technologies and data centers with servers inside them that physically reside in Canada, that were developed in Canada, that are managed by Canadians for Canadians. So it means that nothing flows across the border unless we absolutely want it to, and no foreign country, particularly the U.S., can reach over that border and grab our information against our will. And so it means essentially replacing a lot of the technologies that we have become familiar with that are kind of part of our day-to-day workflow with Canadian alternatives. And it feels like it's a little bit of a hassle. It's kind of annoying. You've got to switch tools. But long term, it renders us significantly less vulnerable, both as individuals as well as a country.
Yeah, always safer to own your own stuff. CUSMA, Canada's trade agreement, is up for review this year. And when we took apart NAFTA, we rebuilt in a portion of digital sovereignty because that wasn't part of the conversation when NAFTA was first made. Under Chapter 19 of CUSMA right now, Canada cannot force a tech company wanting to do business here to store or process data within our country. So how can Canada do better to safeguard our digital sovereignty in these negotiations that are coming up?
Yeah, we're going to have to update those terms as part of CUSMA. We're going to have to reassert, and this might very well upset Donald Trump, but we're going to have to push back on that because this is probably the easiest avenue that he and his government have to continue to pressure Canada politically going forward. And it's where we are most vulnerable. So that term, which made sense when America was a trusted ally and a trusted partner, no longer makes sense. And so Canada's going to have to draw a harder line, even if it means heating up the negotiations and potentially upsetting the U.S.
Tech analyst Carmi Levy, great conversation this morning. Thanks, Carmi.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.